Good day viewers, my name is Audrey Polton. Welcome to Lesson 1 for Grade 10 and 11 Mathematics. The topic for today is solving quadratic equations. Let's have a look at the objectives of the lesson. By the end of today's lesson, you should be able to recognize a quadratic equation and simplify it if necessary. Make a quadratic equation equal to 0. Factorize a quadratic equation and use the factors to find the two solutions. You are probably familiar with the concept of solving a linear equation with one variable. This means an equation such as 6x plus 11 is equal to 29, which has only one variable, x, and the index of x is 1, and there are no higher powers involved. To solve such an equation means to find the value of the variable which makes the equation true. X is equal to 3 is the only solution for this equation. 6 times 3 is 18, and when 11 is added, the answer is 29. There is only one solution to a linear equation. However, in algebra, you will often come across equations which have an x squared term. These are called quadratic equations. A simple example would be x squared is equal to 25. It has an x squared term and a number term. In grade 9, to solve it, you would simply find the square root of each side. But from grade 10 onwards, you need to remember that there are always two possible square roots, a positive one and a negative one. There are always two solutions to a quadratic equation. 25 is a square number, so we get two rational or exact answers. This is not really emphasized in the lower grades, but it is very important from grade 10 onwards. The solution to x squared is equal to 40, and that is x is equal to plus minus the square root of 40. But in this case, 40 is not a square number. So we cannot get an exact answer. We will get two irrational numbers as answers. The square root of 40 is about 6.32455, but this value is irrational and therefore does not ever end, nor does it recur. There is another method which is the general method for solving quadratic equations. It uses one of the properties of 0, which you learned long ago in primary school. Anything times 0 is 0. In exactly the same way, if we have x times y times z is equal to 0, because the answer is 0, it means that one of the three factors must be 0. So x is equal to 0, or y is equal to 0, or z is equal to 0. What about the equation x, open bracket, x minus 4, close bracket, is equal to 0? There are two factors which multiply to 0, so one of them must be 0. So the possible solutions are x is equal to 0 or x minus 4 is equal to 0. X minus 4 is really a simple linear equation which gives the solution of x is equal to 4. From these examples, you can see that if we know the factors of an equation which is equal to 0, we can solve it and find the two solutions. In each of these examples you have seen, you should have noticed that all the factors were on the left side and on the right side there is a 0. This is the general way to solve a quadratic equation. Rearrange the equation so that all the terms are on the left side and the right side is equal to 0. Then factorize the left side so that you can apply the method we have just seen. Let's look at our first equation again. Rather than finding the two square roots, we could also have set the equation equal to 0. X squared minus 25 is the difference between two squares, so it can be factorized as open bracket x plus 5 close bracket and open bracket x minus 5 close bracket. Again, we see that if the product of two factors is 0, then one of the factors must be equal to 0. If the open bracket x plus 5 close bracket factor is the 0 factor, then x must be negative 5. And if open bracket x minus 5 close bracket is the 0 factor, then x is equal to positive 5. These are the same solutions we obtained before, but this time using a different method. The square root method only works if you have an x squared term and a number term. So what happens if there is an x term? Here on the screen is a quadratic equation. X squared is equal to 6x. There are two terms and they both have the variable x, but there is no number term. Rearrange the equation so that all the terms are on the left and the right side is 0. Factorize by taking out the common factor of x. We now have the scenario which should be familiar to you by now. The product of two factors is 0, so one of them must be 0. Either just x is equal to 0 or x minus 6 is equal to 0, which will give the solution of x is equal to 6. We have found the two solutions to the quadratic equation. Here is a chance for you to try solving a quadratic equation. Solve the equation 3x squared is equal to minus 9x. It is a quadratic equation, but did you notice that all the terms are multiples of 3? The first thing to do is to divide through by 3. You are allowed to do this because it is an equation. Just remember to do the same thing to both sides. This makes the number smaller and easier to work with. Remember, never to divide by a variable because it might have the value 0. Make the equation equal to 0 and take out the common factor of x. You now have two factors. One of them must be equal to 0. This leads to the two solutions x is equal to 0 or x is equal to minus 3. If you did not divide by 3, you would end up with the same solutions. All the examples we have seen so far had only two terms, an x squared and a number, or an x squared term and an x term. What happens if there are three terms and we have a quadratic trinomial? As you can see on the screen, it is x squared minus 8x is equal to minus 15. You follow exactly the same process as we have seen before. So once again, rearrange the equation so that all the terms are on the left and it is equal to 0. Now it becomes x squared minus 8x plus 15 is equal to 0. Factorize the quadratic trinomial. As soon as you have two factors which multiply to give the answer 0, it means one of the factors must be 0. So either x minus 3 is equal to 0, which means that x is equal to 3. Or the other factor, x minus 5 is equal to 0, which gives x is equal to 5. These are the two solutions to the quadratic equation. We've come to the end of the lesson. Let's summarize what we have learned today. As we have been working through all these examples on solving quadratic equations, I hope you are realizing how important it is to be able to factorize quickly and correctly. Knowing your tables well is a huge advantage in factorizing. Remember that if there's an x squared term in an equation, you are working with a quadratic equation. Follow the method which I have explained to you, and doing so carefully and accurately, you will get to the correct solutions. Here is a summary of the method you need to follow. Be sure to learn and apply it. Method for solving a quadratic equation. Look for an x squared term. Make the equation equal to 0. Factorize the left-hand side. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve. There must be 2 solutions. Viewers, we have come to the end of the lesson. Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.